Good morning students, welcome back. Now students, in today's session we are going to study about the next chapter of your science and technology part 1, that is the measurement of the matter. But before we start this chapter, I just want you to revise certain things, okay? Now in your previous chapter, okay, you have studied about the previous lessons, you have studied about the Dalton's atomic theory. What is the Dalton's atomic theory? Just we will revise in a short about it. So children, Dalton's atomic theory proposed that all matter was composed of atoms, indivisible and indestructible building blocks. Okay, so this was the first concept, that all the atoms, all the matter, okay, it was composed of atoms which are indivisible, means they cannot be further divided, and indestructible building means they cannot be destroyed. Okay, then while all atoms of element were identical, different elements had atoms of differing size and mass. Means yes, so even though atoms structure is same, okay, elements may be identical, but there will be a difference in the size and mass of atom. The size and mass of atom may be differing for different elements. Then what was the next which we studied? That Dalton's atomic theory also stated that all compounds were composed of combinations of these atoms in defined ratios. Now we are going to revise that what was he saying about the combination, what was his opinion regarding the combination. So there was that combination of these atoms were defined. Okay, Dalton's atomic theory stated that the compounds were composed of combinations of these atoms in defined ratios, means their ratios were fixed. Dalton also postulated that chemical reactions resulted in rearrangement of the reacting atoms, means due to the chemical reactions, okay, due to different chemical reactions, there was the rearrangement of the atoms, means atomic arrangement also changed due to the chemical reactions. Okay, then we have studied about the atomic mass unit. Students, what is the concept of the atomic mass unit? The atomic mass unit is the standard unit that is used for indicating the mass of an atom, means the mass of an atom is indicated by atomic mass unit. And one more concept we studied, that is we had studied about the atoms. What are the atoms? So children, the smallest possible amount of matter that still remains its identity as a chemical element, not now known to consist of nucleus surrounded by electrons. Means atom, in short you can say that it is the smallest possible amount of matter that still remains its identity as a chemical element. Okay, now after this stage the atom will be known as a substance surrounded by nucleus and electrons. Okay, so these were certain things which we have revised of your previous classes, what you have studied in the previous classes. Okay, so regarding the Dalton's atomic theory, these were something concepts which we had a small recapitulation. Now we will be looking towards the next section after this. Okay students, now children, again now we are going to start with the same chapter number 4, measurement of matter. Okay students, now in the previous video we have discussed about the Dalton's atomic theory. Now we are going to focus on what is a compound. Okay, so now children, you should know that a compound is a substance formed when two or more elements are chemically joined. Okay, now this concept I hope you all have studied properly, but still once again we are revising. So if any doubt is there, any query is there, that will be getting solved. Okay, so now we should focus on what is a compound. So students, a compound is a substance which is formed when two or more elements are chemically joined. Now some common examples, children, when I want to talk to you regarding the compounds, first of all I want to make you understand some common compounds which you have seen in your day-to-day life, which you are very well acquainted, and which you know that okay, this thing I am using every day, and now you should be aware that this is a form of a compound. Example is very common: water. Your water is compound of, it is made up of H2O, means hydrogen and oxygen in a definite proportion. Okay, so your water is an example of compound. Sugar, okay, sugar is also common example of a compound. Okay, and then salt, your common salt, your table salt, which is also an example of a compound. Salt is made up of NaCl, sodium chloride. Okay, so these are some of the examples of compound which we are very well aware, and we know that these compounds are existing in our day-to-day life. Now what happens exactly in the compounds? When the elements are joined, the atoms lose their individual properties and have different properties from the elements they are composed of. Means when a new element is formed, the atoms, they lose the property of the element and the new element is formed. Means what? The original substance, it's losing its property, and the new formed substance is totally different from the property of the previous substance. Children, this is one of the major point you can say about the compounds. Okay, that the original substance and the substance which is formed as a result of a compound are having different properties. Okay, now children, now chemical formula is used a quick way to show the composition of compounds. Means when you want to show the composition of the compounds, you are having chemical formula to represent, like H2O. When I speak H2O, immediately it comes, okay, ma'am is speaking about water. When we are talking NaCl, okay, you know that this is a sodium chloride. So chemical formula is very easy and quick way to show the composition of the compounds, means which elements are present there in the compounds, that can be understood very easily with the help of a chemical formula. Okay, now what are the things we are using for the chemical formula? We are using letters, numbers and symbols used to represent the element and the number of element in each compound. Now this thing, number of element in each compound and number of elements, as the time proceeds, as we move towards the chapter, your concepts will be more clear. This I have told only to memorize you, only to recall your concept about the compounds. Okay, now a chemical formula is used a quick way to show the composition of the compounds. So we are mostly writing the chemical formula, and the chemical formula is the standard way to show the composition of the compounds. Okay children, now remaining we will be looking in the next videos. Now letters, numbers and symbols we are using to represent the number of elements in each compound. Okay, so these are certain things which we have discussed here. After this we are going to start with the introduction of the chapter. Good morning students, welcome back again. Students, now we are going to proceed towards the next section of our chapter number 4, measurement of matter. Now students, in this section we are going to discuss about the introduction of the chapter. Okay children, now see, first of all, in this chapter we are going to study about the laws of chemical combination. Then we are going to study about the atom. Okay, the shape, mass and the valency. Okay, now you might be aware of certain terms like valency, you might be aware. Okay, atom you are very well aware, you had one of the chapter in your 8th standard grade. Okay, but still now in 9th we are going to have a little bit more depth knowledge about these things. Then we are going to study about the molecular mass and the concept of moles. Okay, what is the molecular mass and what is the concept of the moles. We are going to study about that, and then we are going to study about the radicals. So there are two types of radicals that we are going to study. Okay, now before we start the chapter, let us have certain discussion, certain introduction, what is the law of chemical combination and how it was derived. Okay, now laws of chemical combination. Now first, before going to understand what is the chemical combination, okay, just revise that we have discussed about the compounds. Okay children, in the previous video we have discussed about the compounds. So when we are talking about the chemical composition, it means we are talking about the compound, any compound or any substance. Now the composition of a substance changes during chemical reaction. As I have discussed in the previous video, what happens when the compound is formed, that the composition of the substance, it changes. Okay, so whenever a chemical reaction is there, the composition of original substance is always going to change. Then many scientists have performed experiments. Okay, in this concern, many scientists performed the experiments in 18th and the 19th century. Some of the scientists which have performed the experiments were the Dalton, Thomson and Rutherford. Okay, now these names you should be remembering children. You should understand the names, that which scientist we are going to study when we are going to study about the laws of the chemical combination. Now scientists, the names were Dalton, Thomson and Rutherford. These studied the structure of substance and the atom, and this which was helpful to understand or to discover the laws of chemical combination. Okay, now what could have been then, what they have done, what they have performed. Scientists could then write the molecular formula of various compounds on the basis of Dalton's atomic theory and the laws of chemical combination. Now what happened? Scientists had certain advantages. Okay, when we discuss about the Dalton's atomic theory, we have discussed many points. So one of the things which we came to know, that when the process of writing the formula of chemical formula of compounds is very useful to understand the chemical composition of any substance. So scientists use the base from Dalton's atomic theory to derive the chemical combination. Okay, now students, here we have reached the end of this session. In next session we are going to discuss about the laws of chemical reactions, chemical combinations, and we are going to discuss the laws. Okay children, kindly read the textbook, go through the video once twice, so that your concepts will be more clear. Okay children, bye, have a nice day, take care. Good morning students, welcome back. Now students, before going to our next section, I want to tell you that I hope you all have watched the video link which was given to you. Okay, so that video link was regarding an experiment. Okay, one practical was done, one experiment was done. Now at the end of the experiment, you come to know that the mass of both the substances is unchanged. Okay, the mass of the substance before mixing, okay, and the mass of the substance after mixing both the liquids remains the same. Now what does it prove? Okay, what does it prove? So student, it proves us about law of conservation of matter. Means what? That it states that the mass of original matter and the mass of matter newly formed as a result of chemical change are equal. Means what? The masses. Okay, now when you were looking the individual mass of the substance, okay, before mixing, and the mass of the substance after mixing, after the formation of a newly formed substance, it is same. So what does it proves? it proves about the law of conservation of matter. Now, in 1785, the French scientist Antonio Lavoisier inferred from his research that there is no rise or drop in the weight of the matter during a chemical reaction. Means, according to him, when any chemical reaction change takes place, there is neither rise, okay, or nor drop in the weight of the substance. Okay, it means what? The weight of the substance before reaction and the weight after reaction remains same. Now, hence we can infer that in a chemical reaction, the total weight of the reactants is same as that total weight of the products formed due to the chemical reactions, and this law is called the law of conservation of matter. So students, I hope you have understood from the previous activity and this explanation that the weight of the substance, okay, remains constant. Okay, the rate of the reactants as well as the weight of the products remains same in the chemical reaction. Now students, here I want to point you one thing that if the definition comes, if you want to write the definition, okay, the law of conservation of matter, so you are not going to write no the rate of the weight of the substance before reaction and after reaction. That is not the technical way. Now you have to make a habit of writing the definitions also properly. So here what you are going to write, if the definition comes, the law of conservation of matter, how you are going to define that? We are going to define in the way, in a chemical reaction, the total weight of the reactants. Okay, reactants means what? Let me make you clear. Reactants means the substances which are taking part in the chemical reactions. So those substances are known as reactants. Okay, so now what are you good? How you are going to define the law of conservation of matter? You are going to define in the chemical reaction, the total weight of the reactants is same as the total weight of the products formed due to the chemical reactions, and this law is called as the law of conservation of matter. Okay students, now here we are going to stop. Please students, understand and learn the definitions. Okay, whenever if in your test or unit test, whenever exam the question comes, define the law of conservation of matter. So for definitions you have to use the language which is given in the textbook. Okay children, okay, stay safe. Bye, see you. Good morning students, once again welcome back. Now students, here we are going to describe, we are going to discuss about the next point, that is we are going to study about the introduction to the scientists. Okay, we are going to study about the introduction to the scientists. Now Post and the Lavoisier were the two scientists who have done their valuable contribution in the field of the chemistry. Okay, so Antoine Lavoisier, he was a French scientist. He is known as the father of modern chemistry. Why? Because he has made certain contributions in the field of chemistry, biology and economics. So here in this slide we are going to discuss the certain contributions made by the scientist Antonio Lavoisier in our present video. Now first of all, he had done the nomenclature of oxygen and hydrogen. Okay, then he has showed that matter combines with oxygen during combustion. Then he was the first to use accurate weighing techniques to weigh the reactants and products in a chemical reaction. So he was the first scientist who used the accurate weighing techniques to weigh the reactants. Now once again, for your information I am telling you students, I know most of you are very well aware with the term reactants and the products, but once again for your explanation, for your understanding, let me tell you that reactants are the substances which take part in the chemical reaction, whereas products are the substance which are formed in the chemical reaction. Okay, so output of the chemical reaction, you can say that, or a remaining product of the chemical remaining, or whatever the things we get in the chemical reaction as an product, that is known as a product, where the components which take part in the chemical reactions are known as reactants. He discovered that water is made up of oxygen and hydrogen. Okay, so Antonio was the scientist who discovered that water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. He has assigned systematic names to the compounds. Okay, he has given the compounds the present names which we are using. Okay, he has assigned those names. Example: sulfuric acid, sulfate, sulfite. Okay, then he is also the author of the first book on modern chemistry. He also studied the elements such as oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, phosphorus, mercury, zinc and sulfur. And he was the first writer of law of conservation of mass in a chemical reaction. So whatever we have studied till now in the law of chemical reaction was given to you by the scientist Antonio Lavoisier. Okay, he was a French scientist. Hope so students, your concepts are clear. Please student, I request you to watch the video twice, thrice and read the lesson. Now we have started the next chapter, measurement of matter. Kindly go through the lesson and read the lesson, and whatever definitions are there, if you want for your reference, you can highlight in your textbook and learn the definitions accordingly. Hope you all are safe okay, and take care of yourself please. And please don't forget to do the eye exercises students. Okay, whatever eye exercises the teachers have given you in the previous video, kindly perform those eye exercises time to time. So whenever you are watching any screen, it is not having any bad effect on your eye. It is preventing your eyes from any damage. Bye students, take care. Welcome back students. Good morning once again children. Now we have started with the Science and Technology Part 1 Chapter 4 Measurement of Matter. Now in yesterday's video we have studied about the I have shown you one of the videos. Okay, so that was the law of constant proportion. Now children, we are going to scientifically verify the law of constant proportion. Okay, now so students, now we are going to study that many compounds can be made by different methods. Okay, many compounds, there are different methods to make simple compound, and many compounds are made by different methods. Now for examples, 2 samples of compound copper oxide, okay, were obtained, one by decomposition of copper carbonate and another by decomposition of copper nitrate. Now see children, just read this sentence properly. What I want to explain you, that compounds of copper oxide were obtained, okay, but we are using 2 different process. One is we are using the process of decomposition of copper carbonate, that is CuCO3, and another by decomposition of copper nitrate. Okay, so these are the 2 different compounds, after which decomposition we get the copper oxide. Now children, from each of these samples a mass of 8 gram of copper oxide was taken, and each was treated independently with hydrogen gas. Now what happened, from both these samples we have taken 8 grams of copper oxide and then we have independently treated it with hydrogen gas. Now after this, what happens, what we are getting once an hydrogen gas is passed through the copper oxide, what we are getting, both gave 6.4 gram of copper and 1.8 gram of water. Now so after the treatment we have got 6.4 gram of copper and 1.8 gram of water. Now we are going to see how this is useful in the verification of the law of constant proportion. Okay, now we are going to see how this is useful to verify the law of constant proportion. Now we are going to see that thing. Before that, please try to understand that here law we have studied. Okay, law we have studied the law of conservation of matter. Okay, now we are going to study the law of constant proportion. Means the proportion of the substance remain constant, there is no change. Okay, so how we are going to see in the next video. Now students, in this video we are going to study the further part of the verification of the law of constant proportion. Now when we are doing the reaction, okay, of copper oxide with hydrogen, okay, we are getting two substances, and the substance you are very well aware. First compound is water and second is the copper. Okay, so you are getting water and copper as the end product of the reaction between copper oxide and hydrogen. Now after this stage we are going to see that it is known in the compound water H2O. Okay, this is symbol of water H2O. The elements hydrogen and oxygen are in the proportion 1:8 by weight. Okay, so this thing you know very well, that the proportion of the oxygen and hydrogen and oxygen, okay, in the water molecule, in a single water molecule, the hydrogen, if suppose hydrogen, if you are considering one single molecule of water, okay, so in that single water droplet, you can say water molecule, the hydrogen, if it is one part, the 8 parts will be of oxygen. In the same way, if the hydrogen is 2 parts, the oxygen will be 16 parts. Okay, in this way there is a constant proportion of 1:8. Now what happened? This means that in 9 grams of water, okay, there are 8 grams of element oxygen. Therefore 1.8 gram of water contains how much oxygen? Now here see the last line, this is a mathematical expression. Okay, this is the mathematical, you can say, calculation. Now see, it means what? Suppose in 9 grams of water there are 8 grams of oxygen. So 1.8 gram of water contains how much oxygen? So if you will cross multiply and divide, okay, if you will multiply 8 by 1.18 and divide by 9, you are going to get the answer 1.16 gram of oxygen. Means if there is 1.8 gram of water, then the oxygen will be how much? 1.16 grams of oxygen will be there in 1.8 grams of water. Now see, now this oxygen has come from 8 grams of copper oxide. Okay, so from where you have got this much oxygen? This much oxygen you have got from 8 grams of copper oxide. It means that 8 gram of both, the sample of copper oxide contains 6.4 grams of copper and 1.6 gram of oxygen, and the proportion by weight of copper and oxygen is 6.4:1:6. Okay, now here it may be little bit difficult for you to understand, so kindly pay attention. Now here what they are saying, that if suppose you are having 8 grams of both the sample of copper oxide, so how much copper will be there? The copper will be 6.4, and how much oxygen will be there? Oxygen will be 1.6. Now 6.4:1.6, if you will see in the last line, children, last line, okay, just observe, I am going very slowly, just focus on the last sentence. If you are able to see 6.4:1:6, this answer you are going to get the proportion 4:1. So now you have understood the ratio is 4:1, means copper oxide and oxygen ratio is 4:1. Thus, the experiment showed that proportion by weight of constituent element in different samples of a compound is constant. Means hence you can show that the proportion by weight is always constant. Means children, see, if a water molecule is there, if it is having the ratio of 1:8 of hydrogen and oxygen, so if you take the n number of water molecules, the ratio is always going to be constant. And with the help of this experiment, we have verified that the proportion by weight of constituent elements in different samples of a compound is constant. Okay. Okay students, welcome back. Now see children, we are trying to verify the law of constant proportion. Now in this verification, we are going to take an example. Okay. Now let us see what is the expected proportion by weight of constituent elements of copper oxide, which would be the formula, and its molecular formula is CuO. Okay. Now see, we want to verify the expected proportion by weight of constituent elements. Means what is the expected proportion? Means in what proportion the constituents in copper oxide are present. Now we want to verify it. We just want to check it. Okay. Now you know that the molecular formula of copper oxide is CuO. This is the molecular formula of copper oxide. Now to find out this, we need to use the known atomic masses of the elements. Now see, atomic mass I am going to teach you. After this session, we are having the next concept of atomic mass only. But for now, understand that we are going to check the weight of an atom. Okay. So we need to know that an atomic mass of all the elements is constant. Okay, that we will be studying. Don't worry about that. Maybe this word is little bit new to you, but you will be studying, so don't get shattered when I use such words. So to find out this, we need to use the known atomic masses of the element. Now, so the atomic mass of copper is 63.5, and oxygen you have studied maybe properly. Okay, oxygen atomic mass is 16. So atomic mass of copper is 63.5 and that of oxygen is 16. This means that the proportion by weight of the constituent elements copper and oxygen in the compound is 63.5 is to 16. Means you are having the proportion. Okay, certain proportion is there. So in one compound, okay, of CuO, copper will be how much times? 63.5 times. And in that situation, oxygen will be how much times? 16. So when you keep the ratio, when you try to find the ratio of this, you are going to find that 63.5. See in the second last sentence before the green alphabet is green font, no, green color, just see, 63.5 is to 16. Now when you try to find out the proportion, 16 ones are 16, 16 twos are, yes, 32, 16 threes are, and 16 threes are 48, and 16 fours are 64. Okay, so 63.5 is to 16, approximately you are getting, if you find out the ratio, you will be getting 3.968. 3.968 we are converting into the nearest tens form. You can say nearest, we are rounding it off, and the rounding off result of 3.968 we are getting 4. So the ratio of copper to oxygen is 4:1. In which compound? The compound is CuO. Okay, copper oxide. So this you have understood. Okay, that the proportion will always remain constant. Now the experimental value of proportion by weight of the constituent elements is matched with the expected proportion calculated with the formula. Okay, So this value has matched the proportion which we have calculated with the formula, and hence we can say that the law of constant proportion is verified. So the law of constant proportion states that the proportion of the element in the constituent elements in the compound is always the same in a definite proportion. Okay. Now remaining we will be see in next lecture, students. Okay, take care, stay safe. Good morning, students, welcome back. Now today we are going to start with the next section. We are going to focus on the atom size, mass and valency. Okay, so here we are going to study about the size of an atom. Again afterwards we will be studying the mass and what is the concept of valency. Now most of the things I hope are very clear to you, at least you are aware with the term atom. Okay, and then here we are going to study about the size of an atom. So we have learned that the center of an atom is the nucleus, and that they are moving electrons in the extranuclear part. So nucleus of any atom is the center. Okay, nucleus is placed at the center, and the parts or the elements which are rotating around it, those are known as an electrons. Then what are the specific characteristics of electrons? Students, electrons are negatively charged elementary particles. Okay, means electrons carry the negative charge. Then, and it is also having the positively charged electrons, positively charged contents. Okay, the positively charged we are having the protons. Okay, and the neutrons are the neutral charge. So electrons are having negative charge, protons are having positive charge, and neutrons are the neutral. Now children, atom is actually an invisible part which is not visible with your naked eye. So we require certain instruments to see the atom. Okay, so now in this next slide we will be looking the image of an atom. Okay, and this image is formed by an microscope. Okay, and that microscope is known as field ion microscope. So this is an image of an atom formed which is visible, which was taken from an field ion microscope. Okay, so it resembles some this type of structure. Then children, how is the size of atom determined? Okay, so the size of atom is determined by the radius. Okay, then the atomic radius of an isolated atom is the distance between nucleus of an atom and its outermost orbit. So what is actually the radius of an atom? The radius of an atom is nothing but the distance between the nucleus and outermost orbit. Now if I want to ask a question to you, that what is there in the outermost orbit of an atom? Just can you think, because it is taught, I know last year it is taught to you. Yes, what do we have in the outermost orbit of an atom? Children, we are having electrons. Are correct. Okay, you got the point. What I wanted to say, that point you have got very correctly, that we are having electrons in the outermost part of an atom, and these are the electrons which finally decide the valency, that you are very well aware. So you can in short remember that it is the distance between the extreme orbit and the radius. Now atomic radius, it is expressed in certain units. Okay, and those units are known as the nanometers. Now if you look to this table, okay, so here we have given certain conversions. What is the value, how to convert nanometers into meters? Children, now see, now we are in 9th standard and we are proceeding towards the next year's board exam. So many things, conversion factors which I have told you in your previous class also, no, you have to keep in mind very properly. So here you are having 1 upon 10 raised to 9 meter is equal to 1 nanometer. It means 1 meter is equal to 10 raised to 9 nanometers. Okay, and children, approximate size of an atom is given. Okay, atomic radius is expressed in meters. So the approximate size of an hydrogen atom is 10 raised to minus 10 meters. Water molecule is 10 raised to minus 9 meters, and hemoglobin molecule is 10 raised to minus 8 meters. So this is the approximate size of different atoms. Okay. Now children, remaining we will be seeing in the next video. Good morning students, welcome back. Now we are going to focus on the size of the atom. We know that the atoms are very tiny. Okay. So this is a pictorial representation. Here you can compare that atom is approximately 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter. If the size is 10 raised to minus 8 centimeter, then the nucleus will be 10 raised to minus 12 centimeter, which is smaller than 10 raised to minus 8. Again, your protons will be much more smaller. That will be approximately 10 raised to minus 13 centimeters. Okay. And electrons are very smaller. They are approximately 10 raised to minus 16 centimeters. Now children, we are unable to see the atoms, okay, with our regular eyes. So as for biological things, you are having a microscope to see very short small animals, bacteria, amoebas. We are able to see only with the help of microscope. In the same way, we are having specially designed instruments to see the atom, okay, and those instruments are like the electron microscope. So you are able to see the atoms with the help of electron microscope, field ion microscope. Now if you remember, in a previous slide I have shown you one image of an atom, and that image was taken with the help of a field ion microscope. Okay, you can, if you can just recall it, you have seen the field ion microscope also. Then we are having scanning tunneling microscope. Okay, so what are the uses of these microscopes? These instruments actually, they have capacity to show enlarged images of the atom. Means the images which are not visible with our open eyes, with our naked eyes, these instruments are having the capacity to show the enlarged images of such atoms, and which becomes more easy for us to study the atom properly and understand the properties of those elements. Now I just want to ask you, can we just try to recall on which thing does the atomic size of an atom depends? Yes, the atomic size of an atom depends on the electron orbits in the atom. It means what? The number of electron orbits, how many electrons are there in an orbit, that is going to decide the size of the atom which you are studying. Now in more detail about this atomic size and what is the effect of the atomic size on the properties of the atoms, now this again deeply you have to study in 10th standard. Okay, the chapter periodic classification, no, there you are having one of the concept which is dependent on the atomic size. So my request to you that now only in this only grade, make your concept very clear about the atomic size. So in 10th standard it is very easy for you. It will be very easy for you to study and understand the concept. So now always keep in mind that the atomic size of any element depends upon the number of electron orbits in the atom. Okay, now children, we have studied about the atomic size. Okay, now again remaining part we will be continuing in our next video. Welcome back students. Now students, we are going to continue with our next section. Now see, this is approximately, I have shown you one slide in the previous. Now this is approximately, if your atom is approximately 10 raised to minus 10 meters, the nucleus will be 10 raised to minus 14, proton and neutron will be 10 raised to minus 15, and again electron will be 10 raised to minus 18 meters. So these are the approximate values. Depending upon every element, there may be a certain changes in that. Okay children. Now children, in this section we have to study about how is the size of atom depending upon. Okay, now the greater number of orbits, the larger the size. For example, an atom of potassium is bigger than the atom of sodium. Why? Because the number of the orbits are greater. This thing we should know children. We should understand that as the number of orbits will increase, the size of the atom will increase. Now can you correlate something with the size and the electron orbit? Okay, Can you compare the number of orbits and something? If you are able to just correlate, children, it is very good. Or if not, na, I will be telling you, don't worry. Children, in your first slide I have told you na, that the atomic size is depending upon the radius. Yes, if I am not wrong, I have told you. Yes, I know, I have told you. So if you can recall, so atomic size is depending upon the radius. And children, radius means what? The distance between the nucleus and the outermost electron orbit, or outermost orbit you can say. So children, if in any atom the electron's orbit is increasing, the number of electron orbit is increasing in any atom, then definitely the radius will increase. And if radius will increase, then definitely the size of the atom will also increase. So hence we can say that the greater number of orbits, the larger the size. Okay, so the more number of orbits, then the atom number will be, size will be also very large. Okay, now if two atoms have same outermost orbit, then the atoms having larger number of electrons in outermost orbit is smaller than one having fewer number of electrons. Why? In the same outermost orbit. Now this is another thing. Now this is something concept about the, which you are going to study about the force, okay, electronic force, that we will be studying in 10th standard. But now, for now, keep in mind that if the two atoms are having same number of outermost orbit, okay, but the atom who is having more electrons, okay, in the outermost orbit will be smaller, and the atoms which are having less number of electrons in the outermost orbit will be bigger. Now why this is so? For your just understanding I am telling you. Maybe at this stage if you are not understanding, kindly don't worry, next year we will be studying, you are having in a syllabus. Now what happened, no children, if the number of electrons is more in the outermost orbit, no, so you know that as many as number of electrons are there, the same number of protons you are having in your nucleus. So what is happening, if more electrons are there, then obviously the more protons will be attracting, since electrons are negative, protons are positive. So more and more protons will be attracting the electrons towards them, and hence due to this force of attraction, the atom size may be little bit smaller as compared to the electrons or the orbit which is having less number of electrons. Okay, once again go through this video, once again go from the first video of today, so your concept will be more clear. So for an example, magnesium is smaller than the atom of sodium because it is having more number of electrons and sodium is having less number of electrons. Okay, and see children, this is actually something which is you are going to study in your next grade, but for your reference I have just given you that as you go children, the atomic size decreases in the group. Okay, and so you in different, okay, so atomic size goes decreasing from left to right, and from up to down it goes on increasing. The reason for this you will be studying in 10th standard, but this is something which you just keep in mind about the periodic table and the atomic size. Okay children, now hope you have understood. Kindly read the lesson properly twice, thrice, underline the highlighted contents, and please go through the video more and more for your revision. Stay safe students, take care, bye. Good morning students, welcome back. Okay children, so today in the science 1 we are going to study about the remaining part of the measurement of matter, chapter 4. Now see students, now we were having certain symbols, okay, for representing the elements. Now Dalton used certain signs to represent, okay. For example, he used certain signs for hydrogen and copper. Okay, now the signs are given here, you are able to recognize, okay, you are able to see the sign. So these were the two signs which Dalton previously used to represent hydrogen and copper. Now today we are not using the signs which are given by Dalton, but we are using the symbols determined by IUPAC, that is International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. This is one of the organization which is an international organization which the scientists are following the criteria based on IUPAC. Now these are the official names. Okay, certain now these are the official, there are official names and symbols, and these are used all over the world which are given by IUPAC. Now currently which method we are using of choosing chemical symbols, this method is based on the method invented by Berzelius. So Berzelius sign and symbol conventional we are using in our day-to-day life, and we are studying the chemistry nowadays. Okay, now previously the names which were given by Dalton, now those are not in existence, so we are not using, we are using the nomenclature system which is given by IUPAC. Okay, and the full form of IUPAC, students, you have to learn. It is International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Now what is the strategy, or what is the method which is given by IUPAC? So IUPAC has suggested the method of the symbol, that according to this method the symbol of an element is either first letter or the first or second or any other specific letter in its name. Either we are using first letter or second letter, or either first and second letter, any specific letter which is used in the name of the element. Okay, whatever thing is there, we are using either first or second letter or any specific letter which is given in the name of that element. Okay, then, and out of this, how we are writing the first two letter, out of the first two letter, always the first letter is capital and second letter is small. So this is very important thing which you should know, that first letter is the capital letter and second letter is the small letter of that element. Okay, so these were the certain symbols which we have used to nomenclature system or give the names to the element in chemistry. Good morning, students. Welcome back once again. Now children, now we are going to study about the molecules of elements and their compounds. Now children, atoms of some elements such as helium, neon have independent existence. It means these elements are in monoatomic molecular state. Monoatomic molecular state means what? When the element is existing as a single molecule. Okay, single molecule is coming, it means that the element is having monoatomic molecular state. Now in certain cases, two or more atoms of an element combine to form molecules, but sometimes only a single atom is having the existence. Sometimes two or more atoms will combine to form a molecule of element. So such elements are in which state? Those atoms are in polyatomic molecular state. Polyatomic means more than one atoms when they are existing, then we are calling them as polyatomic molecular state. For example of polyatomic, you can say oxygen, nitrogen. These are in a diatomic molecular state. Diatomic molecular state means what? Two atoms are existing, like oxygen always exists in diatomic means O2, N2. These are the forms in which oxygen and nitrogen are existing in the environment. That is, we are calling them as a diatomic molecules. Then when atoms of different elements combine with each other, the molecules of compounds are formed. When, yes, that you know how compounds are formed. Okay, so when the atoms of different elements will come together, means like you are saying H2O. Okay, so H2O is, in previous slide we have studied about H2O, how water is formed. Okay, we will be looking, but still you are aware that how water is formed. So when hydrogen combines with oxygen, we get the H2O. Okay, so now such elements, when different elements combine with each other, the molecules of compounds are formed. In other words, now see how we can say in other words that compounds are formed by chemical attraction between different elements. Means when different elements will attract each other chemically. Okay, when NaCl, okay, some of the common compounds that me tell you na, NaCl, sodium chloride, your salt, okay, that is also a compound. When in the beginning of the chapter only I have told you the name of certain compounds. Your water which you are drinking every day, H2O, that is also a compound. So now I hope till the time your concept might have been quite clear that when compounds are formed in the condition when there is an attraction between different elements. Okay children, so compounds are formed by the attraction power or attraction, especially you can say when you will be learning in more depth by the exchange of electrons, that we are going to study, so that's why I am not discussing it now. Okay children, now children kindly read the lesson, okay, go through the video so that your concepts will be more clear. Good morning students, once again welcome. Now today we are going to study about a new concept. Children, see this topic which now I am going to teach you, it is actually a new term to you. So my request to you, I just want you to go through the lesson, watch the videos twice or thrice, because it may be possible that immediately some concepts may be little bit new to you. So here I want you to have a good revision, thorough revision of your textbook also, and thorough revision of the videos which your teacher is sending you. Now today children, we are going to study about the molecular mass. What is the molecular mass? Now children, the molecular mass of a substance is the sum of atomic masses of all the atoms in a single molecule of that substance. Children, the molecular mass means what? It is sum, means it is addition. You are very well aware with mathematics term sum. Sum means what? Addition. So children, molecular mass of a substance means addition of all the atomic masses of all the atoms in a single molecule of that substance. That mass we are calling it as a molecular mass. Then like atomic mass, molecular mass is also expressed in which unit? Dalton. Okay, you are very well aware with the atomic mass. I have taught you in the previous lecture, and I know you all have watched the videos twice, thrice till the point you understand, and then I am even sure you have read the lesson. So you have to go through the textbook and read the lesson, watch the video, so your concept will be more clear. So now I hope you are very well aware with the term atomic mass. So as the atomic mass we are representing in the Dalton unit, in the same way we are representing the molecular mass also in Dalton unit. Okay children, now we have to learn how to deduce the molecular mass of H2O. Means how, if I want to find out what is the molecular mass of water, how I am going to find? Okay, so there is a certain procedure, there are certain steps which I am going to teach you. Kindly, if you want, you can pause the video for certain time, and if you are not having a rough book, pencil or any rough page or pencil, so please bring it. So as I am going to tell you now from here, you try to write in your book, okay, or even if your textbook is open, then you can refer the textbook also, no problem. But kindly have some writing material with you. You can pause the video for a certain time and you can just then open your book, okay, till the time you bring your book. Now see students, here the different columns are made, no? I hope you have brought your books and everything. Now here I am directly just going to start teaching you. Now here children, see, we are having the column molecule, then constituent of elements. Now molecule, for your example we have taken water, H2O. Elements we are having hydrogen and oxygen. Now atomic mass of hydrogen is 1 atomic mass of oxygen is 16. That you have done in your previous lectures. Okay. Then how many hydrogen molecules does water has? It is given above 2. Oxygen molecule it is having 1. Now we are going to multiply the atomic mass multiplied by number of atoms. So atomic mass of hydrogen is 1. And how many atoms are there of hydrogen? 2. Atomic mass of oxygen is 16. How many molecules are there? 1. So total answer 1 multiplied by 2, I am getting the answer 2. 16 multiplied by 1, my answer is 16. And then addition means sum of 16 plus 2, I have got 18. So the molecular mass of water is 18. Okay children, once again you can try this. Pause the video and again look it. So then how I am going to calculate molecular mass of water is equal to, what is this formula? Atomic mass of hydrogen multiplied by 2 plus atomic mass of oxygen multiplied by 1. Okay. So molecular mass is equal to sum of constituent atomic masses. Okay. So once again go through this video. See the description once again till twice and thrice. Then you are going to understand how to derive the molecular mass of any substance. Okay children. Bye. Stay safe. Stay home. Good morning students. Once again welcome back. Now we are going to start with the next concept, that is the concept of mole. Now what is mole? When elements and compounds take part in chemical reactions, it is their atoms and molecules that react with each other, and therefore it is known as numbers of their atoms and molecules. Means we know that atoms and molecules take part in chemical reaction, and hence we know that it is very important to understand how much is the number of atoms and molecules in any chemical reaction. Now, however, while carrying out a chemical reaction, it is convenient to measure out the quantities that can be handled instead of counting the numbers of atoms and molecules. So, you know children that it is every time not possible. Every time it is not possible to count the number of atoms and molecules. Is it possible? Even you will say no teacher. How? Suppose you are having a big element. How you are going to calculate the atom and molecule? So then for such things we are going to have the next method. We are going to try to have the convenient method to measure the quantities instead of counting the numbers of atoms and molecules. So for this convenient purpose, the concept of mole came into existence. Okay. So instead of counting each time atoms and molecules, now we have come up with the suggestion to count the number of moles. Okay. And then what is mole, students? A mole is that quantity of a substance whose mass in grams is equal in the magnitude of the molecular mass of that substance in Dalton. Now this I am going to explain you a little bit in detail. See children. Means what? What is a mole? Mole is that quantity, that substance in grams. Okay. Any substance, if we are measuring in grams, okay, then we have to consider or we have to compare its molecular mass in this unit of Dalton. Now how we are going to, first I am going to show you this formula. See, the number of moles in a substance means what? See, here is given. 1 mole of compound is the mass of substance in grams equal in magnitude to the molecular mass, and the SI unit is mole. Okay. So number of moles, you see in the bracket it is given. How many number of moles of substance is having? That is number of substance in grams. Suppose divided by molecular mass of that substance. Now this is the formula. Once again I am repeating. Number of substance in grams divided by molecular mass of that substance. That is equal to number of moles of that substance. Means what you can say? Mass of substance in grams. How many grams that substance is? Suppose I am having any substance which is 5 gram and its molecular mass is 10. So my number of mole will be 5 divided by 10. Okay. So now I hope your concept is clear. Now what I am going to do, I am going to show you an example. Okay. Now see this. The molecular mass of oxygen is 32 Daltons. Okay. And therefore 32 gram of oxygen is 1 mole of oxygen. Means how 32 is the molecular mass. Okay. What is the molecular mass of oxygen? Down lower quantity 32. And if I am taking 32 grams of oxygen, so 32 and 32 divided by how much it is coming? 1. So therefore I can say that the molecular mass of oxygen is 32 Daltons, and therefore 32 gram of oxygen is making how much? It is making 1 mole of oxygen. Understood? Once again I am repeating. I know this may be little bit complicated, but I am trying my best to help you out. Now see, here we know in previous slide we have calculated the molecular mass of water. It is how much? 18. Okay. 2 plus 16, I hope you are able to recall. Now when I am going to take 18 gram of water, divide by 18, then which quantity I am going to get? Then I will be getting 1 mole of water. Okay. So the mass of the substance in grams upon the molecular mass of the substance, that is known as the number of moles of that substance. Okay. So oxygens, once again I am repeating, oxygen molecular mass is 32, and if I am getting 32 grams of oxygen, okay, substance, if I am taking 32 grams of oxygen divided by 32, then my molecular mass, okay, is 32. Then my number of mole will be coming 1. If water is having, I know water is having molecular mass 18, and if I divided it 18 by 18, then my number of mole is 1. Students, kindly go through the video, then you will be understanding. Read the lesson. Stay safe, stay home, children. Good morning, students. Welcome back. Okay, children. So we are working on the chapter number 4, that is measurement of matter. Now today we are going to focus on the concept of Avogadro's number. Now children, till now you are aware with many of the terms, like what is the atomic mass, what is the molecular mass. Okay. Then in yesterday's video we have studied about the concept of the moles. Now today we are going to study about the concept of the Avogadro's number. Now the number of molecules in 1 mole of any substance is constant. Okay, yesterday we have studied the concept of mole. So now you should know that the number of molecules in 1 mole of any substance is always constant, means it is same. Okay, so whichever substance you take, the number of molecules is always same. Now Italian scientist Avogadro did pioneering work in this context. Therefore this number is called as Avogadro's number and denoted by the symbol capital N and in subscript capital A. Okay, so it is known as an Avogadro's number, and it is denoted by capital N and in subscript capital A. That number is known as an Avogadro's number. Then what happens, students? What is the value of Avogadro's number? The value of Avogadro's number is 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Means these many molecules are present in 1 mole of any substance. That is 6.022 into 10 raised to 23. Now a mole of any substance stands for, so if I am talking about any substance, considering your H2O, considering your carbon dioxide, any substance, so 1 mole of that substance is going to have 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Okay, now for this concept I just want you to go through this slide. See, now see, here you will be understanding more clearly. 12 bananas make 1 dozen. Yes, 144 notebook make 1 gross of notebooks. Okay, In the same way, okay, a measuring cylinder is given. So here you are making that 1 mole of water is having how many molecules? 1 mole of water is having 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Now again, common salt is given. Yes. Now salt. Now 1 mole of common salt means your NaCl. How many molecules it is having? It is also having 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. So it is a common thing that any substance, 1 mole means that substance at that point is having 6.022 into 23 molecules, whether it may be water, 1 mole of water, or 1 mole of common salt. Your answer will be same. Okay. Now here, now it is given, just as dozen has 12 atoms, a century has 100, or gross has 144. So any numbers, so 1 mole with 6.022 into 10 raised to 23. Now suppose 1 mole of water, okay, that is 18 gram of water consists of 6.022 into 23 molecules of water. Now 18 gram of water that we have already derived in the previous video, yesterday's video it is shown. Then suppose you are having 66, read the question, how many molecules are there in the 66 gram of CO2? So how I am going to calculate now? First of all, for knowing the number of moles, we have to calculate molecular mass of carbon dioxide is 44, that you have already known. So how we will calculate the number of moles now? So I am going to divide carbon dioxide grams. How many grams is given to me? 66 grams is given. What is the molecular mass of carbon dioxide? It is 44. When I divide 66 by 44, my answer is 1.5 mole. Now I want to find out how many molecules are there in 1.5 moles. Okay, so I know 1 mole of carbon dioxide contains of 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Now how many molecules will be in 1.5 mole? So what I am going to do, I am going to multiply 1.5 into 6.22 into 10 raised to 23, and my answer will be 9.033 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Okay children, go through the video once again so your concepts will be more clear. Good morning students, once again welcome back. Now children, in the previous video we have studied the concept of the Avogadro's number. For your understanding, I just want you to make clear that Avogadro's number is the number which is denoting that 1 mole of any substance has 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 molecules. Only in short, if you remember this much, then your concept will be more clear. Now we are going to have a look on the concept which you have to keep in mind. Okay, so first concept which you have to keep in mind is that the number of molecules in a given quantity of a substance is determined by its molecular mass. Now for teaching you this thing, I just want to revise once again. Watch the previous video in which I have calculated that 66 gram of CO2 is having how many molecules. Okay, so that how we calculated. I have divided by 66 by 44. You can open your textbook also children. In your textbook also that calculation is given clearly. So what I have done, I have divided 66 by 44. Then my answer came 1.5. I multiplied 1.5 by the number of mole, that is 6.022 into 10 raised to 23, and in that way I have got the answer. Okay, so whenever you want to determine in a given quantity of substance how many molecules are there, so for that thing first of all you should know that what is the molecular mass of that substance. Now children, I request you to once again go through the video in which I have taught you about the molecular mass. Now the number of molecules in equal masses of different substance is different. Now this thing you should keep in mind, that suppose if you are taking 66 gram of carbon dioxide, and again if you are taking 66 gram of NaCl, that is your common salt or sodium chloride, so the number of molecules in both the substance, even though the quantity is 66 grams, but the number of molecules in both the substance will be different. This thing you should keep in mind very clearly. I am explaining you while giving the example. If you want, I have given you the formula also, no, just try to calculate. Okay, just try to calculate on your own, so you will be understanding that if you are taking 66 gram of NaCl and 66 gram of CO2, or you can take 50 gram of NaCl and 50 gram of CO2, then if you just try to calculate, so the number of molecules in both the substance will be different even though their weight is same. This thing I hope you will be understanding. Just try to solve one or two problems on your own. Then one very most last important thing I want to tell you, that 1 mole quantities of different substance have different masses measured in grams. So once again the same thing which point I have repeated, that 1 mole of any substance is having different masses measured in grams. Now suppose 1 mole of CO2 will be having different mass, means different weight in grams, and 1 mole of NaCl will be having different weight. Okay, even 1 mole of water will be also having different weight. Okay, so this thing you should keep in mind about the concept of mole, molecular mass, atomic mass. Children, I know these things are very new to you, these concepts are very new to you. Okay, but the only thing you can do at present is to revise the videos once, twice, thrice. Okay, go through the textbook and try to solve certain problems on your own, so that your concepts will be more clear as the time passes. Okay children, remaining we will be seeing in the next session. So children, stay home, stay safe and take care. Good morning students, welcome back students. Now students, in the chapter 4 of science part 1 we have started measurement of matter. In that, now today we are going to focus on the concept of valency. Now children, before only I have explained you regarding the chapter, okay, that we have to study measurement of matter. It is basically chemistry based. Now children, one thing once again I want to make it very clear to you, that the capacity of an element to combine is called valency. Okay, now this term valency is there, no children. It is very important whenever you are studying chemistry, because henceforth in your 10th standard also, when you take 11th and 12th as one of the subject, science as one of the subject in your 11th and 12th, that time also in chemistry you have to deal with term valency. Many concepts will be totally based on concept of valency, valence electron, sharing of atom, exchange of atom. I am just telling you these are the certain terms. Why I am telling you? So that now you should understand that your concept regarding the valency should be very clear, because if you go now onwards till the time you are going to take science as one of your subject in your graduation, post graduation, any field, valency will be there if you are opting for chemistry. Now we are going to study what is valency. Now children, the capacity of an element to combine is called valency. The valency of an element is indicated by a specific number. You know, in 8th standard you have studied to at least how the compounds are formed, what is valency, but still I am emphasizing you to make your concept more clear now also. Now what is valency? Children, it is the number of chemical bonds formed by one atom of that element with other atom. So the chemical bonds, valency means what? Number of chemical bonds. Some elements are having one valency, some elements are having two valency. This concept in detail I am going to discuss in one of the videos. So don't worry when the valency is 1 or in which condition valency is 2. But for now, keep it in mind the number of chemical bonds formed by one atom of the element with other is known as valency. Now children, in the 18th and 19th century, the laws of chemical combination were used to find out the valencies of other elements. Okay, so the laws of chemical combination we have studied. Okay, and so in 18th and 19th century, it was the only factor to calculate the valency of any element. But till the time we have reached the 20th century, the relationship of the valency of an electron and its electronic configuration was recognized. Now you are knowing that electronic configuration word you are very well familiar since 8th standard. Now what we are studying? We are studying the valency on the basis of electronic configuration of any element. So students, till now you should be clear that valency of any element is determined on the basis of electronic configuration of that element. Okay children, now here we are going to stop. You perform the eye exercises. Okay, till that time we will be switching on the next video. Good morning students, welcome back. Hope you have performed the eye exercises. Now we are going to discuss children valency and how is the valency of any element determined. Now before I teach you this thing, in the last video, in the last slide, we have studied that previously we were having like chemical combinations, laws of chemical combinations for determining the valency of any element. But by the time we reach 20th century, we have confirmed, we have started studying the valency on the basis of electronic configuration of any element. So this thing is very clear to you that now what you are studying, the valency, it is totally based on the electronic configuration of that element. Now children, in this slide we have taken sodium atom. Okay, Na. Its electronic configuration is, yes, in 8th and also you have studied, so that's when I am just wanted you should know. It's 281. In 8th you have studied, I know very well. So the electronic configuration of sodium is 281. Okay, so now what is happening? We are going for a octet state. Any element want the outermost state of its outermost orbit of its atom to be octet. Now why octet? Because at that stage the element will be stable. So now is it possible for sodium to take 7 electrons from chlorine? Yes. Is it possible? No. So what sodium atom is planning? It's planning, okay, consider it as two friends, okay. It is not possible to take 7 electrons. Now sodium, what it will do? It will donate 1 electron to chlorine. Okay. Now what is the electronic configuration of chlorine? It is 287. Okay. So it is not possible for chlorine to give all the 7 electrons. Not at all. So what it will do? It will accept the electron given by chlorine. So when sodium will give its configuration, see in the last bracket, it will be 28. Chlorine will accept, its configuration will be 288. Now children, at this stage the octet of both the element is completed, and hence we can say that due to this exchange the new element is formed, new compound is formed, that is NaCl. Okay. So now we can say that a new element is formed, new compound, sodium chloride is formed. Now, so whatever I have told, it is just I have written in the slide that sodium atom gives away 1 electron and a cation of sodium is formed. Hence, the valency of sodium is 1. Now, children, because the sodium is losing one electron, no? Okay. So, that's why it will be a positive charge. Okay. And since chlorine is accepting one electron, it will be negative charge. So, since sodium is giving one electron, it will be Na plus. So, it is a positive charge. It is also known as cation. And chlorine is accepting, so it will become NaCl minus. So, since it is chlorine is minus, it is also known as anion. Okay. And hence the valency of sodium is also 1 and chlorine is also 1. After the give and take of electron is over, the electronic configuration of the both is completed. Okay. Of both is ion is relating and it is completed as an octet. So, after give and take, the octet of both the electrons is, after exchange of electrons, the octet of both the element is completed. And what happens then? Due to the attraction between the unit but opposite charges of two ions, one chemical bond is formed between Na positive and Cl negative, and the compound NaCl is formed. This NaCl is nothing but your common salt. Okay, children, hope you have understood. Please, I request you all to once again see the video, go through the textbook lessons, and your doubts will be cleared. Once, twice, thrice, as many as times you will watch the videos, your concepts will be much more clear. Okay, children, remaining we are going to see in the next videos. Good morning, students. Once again, welcome back. Hope you have performed the exercises. Now, children, we are going to study about the valency. Okay, this we have already studied in the previous slides, but I want to make your concept more clear. So, children, up till now, I hope you have understood that the sodium atom has capacity to give away one electron, while chlorine atom has the capacity to take one electron. Okay, this means that the valency of both the elements sodium and chloride is 1. This we have proved in the previous slide also. We have studied in the previous slide that how the valency of sodium and chlorine is 1. Okay. Now, from this the electronic definition of valency is as follow. What is the valency's definition, students? The definition of the valency or the valency can be defined as the number of electrons that an atom of an element gives away or takes up while forming an ionic bond is called the valency of that element. Now here I want to discuss something, students, that valency, don't get confused that just when any element is giving away the particular number of electron, that part is only called as valency. No, children, either the element gives away or it's take up. Okay, so number of electrons given by an element or either accepted by an element while forming the ionic bond is called the valency of that element. Now children, I hope you have studied about the ionic bond and covalent bonds. Okay, so I hope that if you can recall in your 8th standard you have studied about the types of bonds. The one type is ionic and another is the covalent. But children, one thing you should always keep in mind, that when the term valency is coming, when we are speaking about the term valency, definitely the bond will be only and only ionic bond. Okay, you are not going to have give and exchange in covalent bond, rather you will be sharing the electrons when you form a covalent bond. This you already know, but just I have revised you, I have told you so that your concepts will be more clear. Good morning, students. Once again, welcome back. Now children, till now we have studied about the concept of valency, and I am damn sure my students are observing the videos very properly, very seriously, and they have now till now they have understood what is the valency, what is the concept of the valence electrons. Okay, so why a particular element is having certain valency, everything you are very clear. Now we are going to study the concept of variable valency. Now children, what is the concept of variable valency? What is variable valency, children? Under the different conditions, the atom of some elements give away or take up different numbers of electron. So children, now when we have studied the situation, or when you have studied the condition of sodium chloride. Now what is the valency of sodium? 1. Why? It is giving away 1 electron. What is the valency of chlorine? 1. Why? It is accepting 1 electron. But under the different conditions, the atoms of some elements either give away or take up different electrons, means their exchange number is not fixed, and in such condition it is known as variable valency. Okay, in such cases those elements exhibit more than one valency, and this property of element is called as variable valency. Now children, I am going to explain you variable valency, the term variable valency, with the help of this chart. Okay, this is a table. We are going to study the concept of variable valency with the help of this table. Now see students, copper, symbol Cu. Its valency is either 1 or 2, means 1 or 2. So when its valency is 1, means only Cu plus, then we call it as cuprous. Okay, and when its valency is Cu2 plus, we called it as cupric. Okay, so we are having various elements like cuprous oxide, cupric oxide. So this is totally dependent upon the valency. When valency is 1, it is known as cuprous. When the valency is having the configuration Cu2 plus, then its name as cupric. Similarly, mercury valency is either 1 and 2. So when it is having Hg plus, means only one ion, it is known as mercurous. Okay, and when it is having the valency Hg2 plus, then the element is becoming called as mercuric. So we have studied about the mercuric oxide. Okay, so these are the elements which are formed when the valency of the element is 2, that is Hg2 plus. Okay, now in the same way, iron is having symbol Fe. Its valency, variable valency, is either 2 and 3. So in the condition when the iron is having valency Fe2 plus, it is called, any element which is formed by such type of iron will be named as ferrous. And in the situation when it is having the variable valency 3, that is 3 plus ions, then it is known as ferric. So we know ferrous sulfate, ferric sulfate, okay, ferrous oxide. These are the certain examples of the variable valencies of different elements. Okay children, once again go through the video. It is very easy concept, and if I know my students are doing the education system very properly, they are studying very properly, all the instructions they are following very properly, so these concepts will also be very easy for you to understand. Okay children, once again watch the video, go through it, read the lesson, okay, and take care. Stay home, stay safe. Good morning students. Okay children, so now today we are going to start with the new concept of radicals. So before we start with the concept, before I teach you the actual slide, actual concept of radicals, we are going to do a certain you can say revision or feedback. Okay, so we are just going to solve a table. Now this chart is there, we are going to complete this chart. Now from my side, I am just going to read out the name, and in your textbook this chart is already given, so you can refer the chart in your textbook, and this table you write cations and anions from your side. Okay, and I hope you all will be very honest to solve this. So solve honestly. If you want, initially you can solve with pencil. So if you doubt any, then afterwards you can change. Any queries there, any mistake is that, you can definitely change. Okay, So in NaOH, which is the cation and which is the anion? Write down. Okay, then write down the cations and anion for KOH and CaOH, calcium hydroxide. Okay, now next section is acidic section. So here HCl, hydrochloric acid, write the cations and anions for HCl, HBr and HNO3. Okay, I hope you have completed this much. Now I am going to discuss the answers with you all. Okay, if any mistake is there from your side, you can do the correction, no queries. Now see students, in compound NaOH, which is the cation, Na plus is the cation and OH minus is the anion. Okay, then K plus is the cation and OH minus is anion. Again in calcium hydroxide you are having Ca2 plus as cation and again OH minus as anion. Whereas in HCl you are having cation as H plus and Cl minus is the anion. Okay, in HBr you are having H plus as cation, Br minus as anion. And in HNO3 you are having H plus as cation and NO3 as minus as anion. Okay, so children, this was just a recapitulation, you can say. So after this we are going to study about the concept of the cations and anions in the next video. What are the radicals, that again we are going to study in the next video. Okay students, welcome back. Now in previous video we have just discussed about the certain cations and anions. Okay, now we are going to discuss about the radicals. What are the radicals? Now compound with two ionic bonds have two constituents. One constituent is cation, that is positively charged ion, and another is anion, that is negatively charged ion. Now they take part independently in chemical reactions and therefore they are called radicals. So cation and anions take independently part in chemical reaction, that is the reason they are called as radicals. It has been seen that previously we have solved one table. I hope you have remembered the previous first video I have shown you one table. So we have seen that different bases, that NaOH, KOH are formed from the various cation radicals. Okay, are paired with anionic radical, that hydroxide, that is sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide and calcium hydroxide. Okay, so these all are the forming pairs with the anionic radicals. So you can also say that cationic radicals are also called as basic radicals. Means cationic radicals, their another name is also known as basic radicals, and ionic radicals, anionic radicals are called as acidic radicals. Okay, all the anions are known as acidic and cations are known as basic. Then children, we should also know that generally basic radicals are formed by removal of electrons. Removal of electrons means what children? The basic radicals are losing the electron, they are giving away the electrons. Okay, so example, Na plus copper, sodium and copper. But some are exception, like NH4 plus, they are not losing the electron, instead they are gaining the electron. This is one exception. Okay, NH4 is exceptional. Then similarly acidic radicals are the acidics which are formed by adding the electrons to the atom. Okay, like chlorine and S2 minus. Now but the exception is in it MnO4. Okay, so these are the differences between basic and acidic radicals. Now also we are having the concept of monoatomic radicals. Monoatomic radicals means what? simply they are having single atom like Na plus, Cu plus, Cl minus. These all are very called simple radicals, and hence they are also known as monoatomic radicals. Now children, we should also study regarding the radicals, that when a radical is a group of atoms carrying charge such as SO4 minus NH4, it is called as composite radicals. Means what? When a radical is carrying the charge like SO2 minus NH4, okay, these are the certain radicals, so it is known as a composite radical. Now one thing which you should focus very properly, that we have discussed about the valency. Now one more important thing regarding valency is that the magnitude of charge of any radical is called its valency. Magnitude of charge, whether the element is having positive charge or negative charge, and how many electrons it is gaining or losing, that is also concept you can relate with the term valency. Okay children. Now children, previously video we have discussed the answers. I hope you all once again go through that chart so your concept will be more clear, and keep watching the videos. Any queries you can ask in the doubt solving session. Good morning students, welcome back. Now children, here in this video we are going to discuss about the steps of writing the chemical formula. What are the steps for writing the chemical formula? Now see children, now first step when you want to write and you want to derive the formula for any substance, when you want to derive the chemical formula for any substance children, first step is you have to write the symbol of the radicals. Okay, you have to write the symbol of the radicals. So radical symbol means what? For that also there is a procedure, there is a standard rule we are following. For when we want to write the basic radical, that basic radical we are indicating on the left side, and the acidic radical we are indicating on the right side. Okay, so here I have written NaSO4. In step 1 I have just shown you how to write the symbols. Okay, we have to write only symbols. Now then, what we have to do? We have to write the valency, okay, shown below the respective radicals. Now valency means, now see what is the valency of sodium and what is the valency of SO4. Okay, so valency of sodium is 1 because it is written below that. See, you can just see below it. Okay, valency of sodium is 1 and the valency of SO4 is 2. So first we are going to write the symbol of the radicals, then we have to write the valency, then in the third step we have to cross multiply. Okay, this cross multiplication, I hope you are very well aware in your mathematics. You are learning from your 6th to 5th standard now, that how to cross multiply. So in third step what you have to do children, you have to cross multiply, okay, as shown by the arrow, by the number of the radicals. So Na you are multiplying by 2 and SO4 you are multiplying by 1. Okay, so when you are multiplying Na2, so what you are getting? Okay, final formula is Na2. So below Na we are going to write 2, and below SO4 below SO we are going to write 4. Okay, so this is the final formula of Na2SO4. Okay, now in the same way you can practice to derive the chemical formula for the other elements and other compounds also. Now see, in order to write the chemical formula of compounds, it is necessary to know the valency of various radicals. Okay, so when you want to derive any chemical formula, first very important thing, first of all you should know the symbol. Okay, here they have not written symbol because they are considering that 9th standard children are very well aware with the symbol. So from my side, once again I am telling you, first of all you should know the symbol, and second thing children, you should know the valency of the various radicals. Okay, the names and symbol along with the charge of the common radicals are given in the chart below. So what now I am showing you? I am showing you a chart, okay, in which certain common radicals are there. Children, this chart is given in your textbook also, so your further reference you can take with the help of your textbook also, but I want to discuss from my side, that's why I am showing you this chart also. So certain basic radicals and acidic radicals are given over here along with their valency. Okay, along with their charges are also it is given over here. So you can follow this chart, and then henceforth it will become very easy for you to derive any chemical formula for any element once you are knowing the charge. Okay, once if you understand whether the radical is basic radical or acidic radical, okay, then it will be very easy for you to derive the chemical formula for particular compound. Okay children, now children, hope you have understood the concept. Kindly go through the video once, twice, and then go through the textbook. Okay, all the best for your future studies now. Okay, bye. Stay home, stay safe children, take care. Good morning students, once again welcome back. Now children, today we are going to continue with the next part of our chapter, that is we are going to study something about the chemical formula of compounds. Okay, we are going to revise actually. So now here we are going to discuss about the characteristics of the compound formed by an ionic bond. Okay, and its molecule has two parts. Those are cations and anions, that is basic radical and acidic radical. Now the name of ionic compounds had two words. Okay, you are knowing that name of ionic compound means what? Suppose you are considering sodium chloride. Sodium chloride means what? NaCl. So sodium is different element and chlorine is different element. So in this way you can understand that of the concept that ionic compound has two words. First name is cation and second is the anion. Okay, first is the name of the cation and second is the name of the anion. Now children, whenever we have to write the formula, okay, there is certain method we have to follow, certain methods, certain you can say rules while writing the chemical formula of any substance. Now what is the method that we are going to discuss? So for example, when you want to write the formula of sodium chloride, okay, so what you will be writing, the symbol of cation is written on the left and adjoining to it the symbol of anion. So on the left side, first of all you have to write the symbol of any cation. Okay, so in NaCl you have to write the symbol of cation on left and anion on the right side. Now children, we are not showing the charges. Okay, charges are not shown, though the number of the ion is written as subscript on the right of the symbol of the ion. Means what? Now NaCl, so we are not writing Na plus and Cl minus, but suppose if you are having H2SO4, now sulfuric acid, so you are not going to write H2 minus SO4 minus, no. So what you are going to write? You are going to write H2. So 2 means what? It shows the number of the charges. Okay, and SO4, okay, so 4 you are going to write in subscript on the right side of the symbol. Okay, so this is the rule. Now see H2SO4, okay, then HNO3, KMNO4. Now in these elements we are writing the charges on the left hand, okay, sorry, on the right hand after the ion. Now students, we are just not writing it, but we are going to discuss also. So before discussing the video, before discussing the next video, I just want to make you out that kindly, if it is possible for you, keep your textbook near you, so that whenever I will be dictating, explaining anything, your concepts will be more clear. Okay students, remaining the steps for writing the chemical formula we are going to see in the next video.